My boss canceled my promotion hours before the announcement. Payrol sent an email anyway. For 5 long years, I gave absolutely everything to the marketing department at Apex Solutions. I was the first person to unlock the office doors. Before we continues, please subscribe and leave a comment telling us where you're watching from. Your support helps this powerful, life-changing story reach the world. In the morning and the last person to turn off the lights at night. I missed family birthdays, skipped lunch breaks, and worked through weekends to fix mistakes that I didn't even make. My official job title was Senior Associate, but everyone knew I was actually running the entire team. My boss, a man named Greg, was the kind of manager who spent more time on the golf course than in the boardroom. He was charming and loud, but he didn't know the first thing about our actual projects. Whenever we had a big success, Greg would swoop in at the last minute to take all the credit. Whenever there was a problem, he would blame me. Despite his terrible leadership, I stuck around because he had promised me the vacant Director of Strategy position. He dangled that promotion in front of me like a carrot on a stick. Just one more quarter, he would say. Knock this project out of the park, and the director chair is yours. I believed him because I wanted to believe him. I needed that raise to pay off my student loans and finally start my life. The Director of Strategy role wasn't just a fancy title, it was a life-changing opportunity. It came with a massive salary increase, a private office, and actual decision-making power. For the last 3 months, I had been doing the job on an interim basis while Greg finalized the paperwork. I attended the high-level strategy meetings, managed the budget, and led the team. I was doing the work of a director for the pay of an associate. 2 weeks ago, Greg finally pulled me into his office with a big fake smile. "Good news, kid," he said, clapping me on the back. "Corporate approved it. You're the new director. We are going to make the official announcement to the whole company next Friday." I almost cried with relief. I called my parents immediately. I took my girlfriend out for a celebratory dinner. I started looking at new apartments, finally believing that my hard work had paid off. I spent the next 10 days preparing a vision presentation for my new role. I was ready to lead. I had no idea that Greg was never planning to let me sit in that chair. He was just using me to keep the seat warm for someone else. The week of the announcement was a blur of nervous excitement. I walked around the office feeling like I was floating on air. Colleagues who knew about the open position kept winking at me, whispering, "I hear good things are coming on Friday." Even the HR representative, a nice woman named Brenda, gave me a thumbs up when I passed her in the hallway. Everything seemed perfectly locked in. I had updated my resume in my head and was already planning how to reorganize the team to be more efficient. Thursday night, I stayed up late ironing my best suit. I wanted to look perfect for the all-hands meeting where Greg would call my name. I visualized shaking his hand, accepting the promotion, and finally getting the respect I deserved. I arrived at the office on Friday morning at 7 a.m., holding a cup of coffee, ready for the best day of my career. The announcement was scheduled for 2 p.m. But at 10 a.m., my Outlook calendar pinged with a notification. It was a meeting invite from Greg. Subject, urgent sync. Location, his office. Time, now. My stomach instantly dropped. Urgent meetings with Greg were never good news. I walked into Greg's office and the atmosphere was instantly cold. Usually, Greg sat back in his chair with his feet on the desk, but today he was standing by the window, refusing to look at me. "Close the door," he said sharply. I closed it and sat down, my hands trembling slightly in my lap. "Is everything okay with the announcement?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Greg finally turned around. He didn't look sorry. He looked annoyed that he had to have this conversation. "Look," he began, not making eye contact. "There has been a change of plans. Corporate decided to go in a different direction with the director role. We aren't going to be promoting you today." The world seemed to stop spinning. "What?" I managed to whisper. "But you said it was approved. You said it was a done deal." Greg shrugged, adjusting his expensive tie. "Budget cuts," he lied smoothly. "They decided we need someone with more external experience. We're putting the position on hold for now. You'll stay as a senior associate." I felt like I had been punched in the gut. "On hold? But I've been doing the job for 3 months. You promised me." Greg's face hardened. He didn't like being questioned. "It's out of my hands," he snapped. "Don't take it personally. You're a great worker, but you're just not ready for the big leagues yet. Maybe next year." He checked his watch, signaling that the meeting was over. "Now, I need you to cancel the team celebration you planned. And don't say anything to the team yet. I'll handle the communications." I stood up, my legs feeling like jelly. It was a lie. I knew it was a lie. Budget cuts didn't happen overnight on the day of an announcement. And not ready was an insult after 5 years of carrying his department. I walked out of his office in a daze. I had to go back to my desk and sit there, surrounded by the work I had done to earn a promotion that was just stolen from me. I felt humiliated. I had told my family. I had told my friends. Now I had to go home and tell them I was a failure. I spent the next few hours staring blankly at my computer screen, fighting back tears of rage. I started quietly packing my personal belongings into a box. I couldn't stay here. I couldn't work for a liar. By 3 p.m. the office was buzzing. The all-hands meeting had been canceled via email at the last minute, with a vague note about scheduling conflicts. My coworkers were confused, but they went back to their work. I was just waiting for the clock to hit 5 p.m. so I could leave and never come back. I had already drafted my resignation letter. I was going to print it out, leave it on Greg's desk on Monday morning and walk away. I didn't care if I didn't have another job lined up. My dignity was worth more than this paycheck. I was deleting personal files from my desktop when a notification popped up in the bottom corner of my screen. Ding. You have one new message from Payrol. I frowned. Payrol emails usually came on Tuesdays bi-weekly. It was Friday afternoon. Maybe it was a notice about the severance I wouldn't be getting, or maybe a tax form. I almost didn't open it. I was so done with this company. But curiosity got the better of me. I clicked the notification. The subject line read, Status change and compensation adjustment, effective immediately. I opened the email and my jaw literally dropped. It was an automated message generated by the company's HR software, Workday. Dear employee, it read. Congratulations on your new position. This email confirms your change of status to Director of Strategy, effective today. Your new annual salary has been updated in the system. Please see the attached compensation breakdown. I stared at the screen, blinking rapidly. I opened the attachment. It was an official offer letter, digitally signed by the Vice President of HR and Greg. The date on the signature was 2 weeks ago. The salary listed was nearly double what I was currently making. I felt a rush of confusion. If Greg had canceled the promotion at 10 a.m., why was Payrol sending me a confirmation at 4 p.m.? Then it hit me. The corporate systems were automated. Greg had signed the paperwork weeks ago to get the approval. When he decided to screw me over this morning, he had forgotten to notify the payroll department to stop the automated system processing. The budget cuts were a lie. The position wasn't on hold. It was active, funded, and legally mine. My mind started racing a mile a minute. This wasn't just a glitch, it was evidence. Greg hadn't canceled the promotion because of corporate. If corporate had canceled it, the funding would have been pulled from the system, and this email would never have triggered. Greg had decided to cancel it himself, probably verbally, but hadn't done the administrative work to reverse it yet. What? Why would he lie about budget cuts if the money was right there? I looked at the digital signature again. Greg had signed off on my raise. This meant that as far as the company's official records were concerned, I was now the director. I quickly forwarded the email to my personal Gmail account. Then I printed 2 copies and put them in my backpack. I wasn't going to resign. Not yet. I realized that I held a winning lottery ticket, and Greg didn't even know he had handed it to me. He thought I was just a sad, defeated employee packing up my box. He had no idea that the system he was too lazy to manage had just exposed his entire scheme. I needed to understand exactly what was happening before I made my move. I waited until 5:15 p.m., when most people, including Greg, had left for the weekend. The office was quiet. I walked over to the payroll department. The lights were dimmed, but I saw a lamp on in the corner. It was Brenda, the nice HR rep who had given me the thumbs up earlier. I knocked gently on her cubicle wall. Hey Brenda, I said softly. She spun around, surprised. Oh, congratulations, she beamed. I saw the system update go through this afternoon. Director. That is huge. Her reaction confirmed everything. She didn't know Greg had canceled it. Thanks Brenda, I said, playing along carefully. I just wanted to check. Is everything fully finalized? Greg mentioned some last-minute paperwork. She laughed. Greg is always worried about nothing. Yes, it's done. The status change is locked in for this pay period. You'll see the new rate on your next check. The only thing left is the formal announcement, but administratively, you are the director. That's great, I said, my heart pounding against my ribs. Actually, Brenda, quick question. If the position were to be, say, given to someone else or put on hold, what would have to happen? Brenda looked confused. Well, since the effective date is today, Greg would have to file a formal demotion or role reversal form. He'd have to explain to the VP why he promoted you and then immediately demoted you. It's a huge red flag for HR. Usually that only happens if the employee does something terrible like steal money or punch someone. A light bulb went off in my head. Greg hadn't filed the reversal paperwork because he knew it would trigger an investigation. He was planning to bully me into accepting the cancellation quietly. He probably planned to wait a few weeks, let the system glitch, slide, and then quietly slot someone else in. He was trying to bypass the official HR process by lying to my face. "Thanks, Brenda," I said. "Have a great weekend." "You too, Director," she called out. I walked back to the elevator with a shark-like smile. I wasn't an associate anymore. I was a director. And I was going to act like one. I spent the entire weekend strategizing. I didn't tell my parents or my girlfriend about the cancellation meeting. I only told them about the email. I wanted to manifest the victory. I read the employee handbook cover to cover. I studied the company's policy on verbal contracts and system of record. By Sunday night, I figured out Greg's game. He wasn't just canceling my promotion. He was saving the spot for someone else. I remembered seeing him give a tour of the office on Wednesday to a young guy who looked exactly like him, probably a fraternity brother or a nephew. Greg wanted to hire his buddy, but he needed the budget approved first. So he used my resume and my performance data to get the director role approved by corporate, planning to bait and switch at the last second. He used me to unlock the budget, then planned to discard me. It was genius in an evil, lazy way. But he forgot one thing. Once the system processes the promotion, I am the incumbent. To get rid of me, he has to fire me. And he had no cause to fire me. Monday morning, I arrived at 8 a.m. sharp. I didn't go to my cubicle. I went straight to the empty director's office. It was unlocked because it had been vacant for months. I walked in, set up my laptop, and placed my nameplate on the desk. It felt bold. It felt dangerous. But I had the email. At 9 a.m., the office started to fill up. People walked by the glass door and did a double take. They saw me sitting there working. A few waved. I waved back. At 9:30 a.m., Greg strolled in holding his latte. He walked past the director's office, stopped, and walked backward. His face went pale. He stormed into the room. "What the hell do you think you are doing?" he hissed, closing the door behind him. "Get out of here. I told you on Friday the promotion is cancelled." I didn't stand up. I leaned back in his chair, and looked him in the eye. "Actually, Greg, I think there has been a misunderstanding. I received the official confirmation from Payrol on Friday afternoon. Effective immediately." Greg turned a shade of purple I had never seen before. "That was a mistake," he spat. "An automated error. I told you the role is on hold. Get your stuff and get back to your cubicle before I write you up for insubordination." "I don't think it's insubordination to occupy the office assigned to my job title," I said calmly, sliding the printed email across the desk toward him. "As you can see, the offer is signed by you and the VP of HR. It's in the system." Brenda confirmed it. "If there's an issue, maybe we should get HR down here to clear it up." Greg froze. The mention of HR terrified him. He knew he hadn't filed the reversal paperwork yet. If we called HR now, he would have to explain why he was verbally canceling a promotion that was legally active. He would have to explain the bait and switch. He snatched the paper off the desk. "You are playing a dangerous game," he growled. "You think a computer glitch makes you a director? I run this department. I decide who sits here. Then file the paperwork," I challenged him. "If I'm not the director, file the formal demotion form. Explain to corporate why I'm being demoted 3 days after a stellar performance review." Greg stared at me, his eyes darting around. He couldn't do it. He didn't have a valid reason. "Fine," he said, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. "You want to play hardball? Stay in the office. But don't get comfortable. I'm going to fix this glitch by end of day, and you'll be lucky if you still have a job as a janitor." He turned and stormed out. I let out a breath I had been holding for 5 minutes. My hands were shaking, but I had won the first round. I knew he was going to his office to call his cronies or try to manually override the system. But he was slow. And he was lazy. I had to cement my position before he could find a loophole. I immediately opened my email and sent a message to the entire department. "Team, looking forward to our weekly strategy sync. Please note, we will be meeting in the director's office moving forward." I was planting my flag. An hour later, I saw the young guy from the tour walking through the lobby. He was wearing a suit and carrying a briefcase. This was it. This was the guy Greg wanted to give my job to. Greg met him at the reception and led him toward the conference room, looking flustered. I decided to be proactive. I stood up, walked out of my office, and intercepted them in the hallway. "Hi there," I said, extending my hand to the stranger. "I don't think we've met. I'm the director of strategy." The young guy looked confused. He shook my hand automatically. "Oh, hi. I'm Mark." I thought, He looked at Greg. Greg looked like he wanted to strangle me. "He's just helping out," Greg said quickly, grabbing Mark's elbow. "Come on, Mark, let's talk in the conference room." As they walked away, I heard Mark whisper, "You said the position was open." Greg whispered back, "It is. Just a clerical issue." I had him. Mark knew something was wrong. Greg was lying to both of us. I went back to my desk and decided to create a paper trail that couldn't be ignored. I drafted an email to the VP of Operations, Greg's boss. I didn't complain. I didn't mention the fight. I simply wrote, "Hi David, I'm honored to accept the Director of Strategy role. I've already begun the transition and wanted to share my 90-day plan with you. Attached is the presentation." I hit send. Now the VP knew I was in the role. If Greg tried to fire me or replace me with Mark, he would have to explain to the VP why he was firing a guy who was already sending high-level strategy plans. It was a checkmate move. 10 minutes later, the VP replied, "Great initiative. Congratulations on the well-deserved promotion. Greg has been singing your praises for months. Let's grab lunch next week to discuss." I smiled. Greg hadn't told the VP about the cancellation either. Greg was trapped in his own web of lies. The rest of the morning was a standoff. Greg stayed in the conference room with Mark for 2 hours. When they finally came out, Mark looked angry. He shook Greg's hand stiffly and left the building without looking back. Greg stood in the hallway, defeated. He realized he couldn't hire his friend because the budget was already allocated to me. He couldn't fire me because the VP was now expecting me to deliver results. He walked slowly to my new office. He stood in the doorway looking tired. "You think you're smart, don't you?" he asked. "I'm just doing the job I was hired to do, Greg," I replied. "You signed the paper. You approved the budget. I'm just following your lead." He glared at me. "Watch your back. One mistake, one missed deadline, and I will write you up so fast your head will spin." "I won't miss," I said confidently. Greg huffed and walked away. I knew our relationship was destroyed, but I didn't care. He had tried to ruin my career to do a favor for a buddy. I had saved myself by trusting the system he was too incompetent to manipulate. I spent the rest of the day working harder than I ever had. I held the team meeting. I reorganized the project files. I acted like the leader I was. The team was thrilled. They hated Greg and they were genuinely happy to see me in the big chair. Their support was the final piece of armor I needed. If Greg tried to move against me now, he would have a mutiny on his hands. Over the next few weeks, the dynamic in the office shifted. Greg tried to sabotage me a few times. He would forget to invite me to meetings or hide critical information. But because I was now a director, I had access to the same servers and files he did. I didn't need him to spoon-feed me info anymore. I bypassed him and went straight to the source. I built relationships with other department heads. I made myself indispensable to the VP. Greg slowly realized he was becoming irrelevant. He had spent so many years taking credit for my work that he didn't actually know how to do the work himself. With me in the director's seat, his incompetence was becoming obvious to everyone. The final blow came a month later. The VP, David, called a budget review meeting. He asked Greg to explain the variance in the marketing spend. Greg started stammering, trying to bluff his way through the numbers. He clearly hadn't read the reports. David frowned, his patience wearing thin. "Greg, these numbers don't add up," David said. "Do you even know where our Q3 spend is going?" Greg looked at me, panic in his eyes, silently begging me to save him like I always used to. I looked back at him. I could have jumped in. I could have answered the question and made him look good. But I remembered the urgent sync meeting. I remembered him telling me I wasn't ready. I stayed silent. I let the silence stretch out until it was uncomfortable. David looked from Greg to me. "Director?" David asked, turning to me. "Do you have the data?" "Yes, sir," I said, opening my folder. "The variance is due to the vendor consolidation project. We're actually under budget by 10%, but the savings are being reinvested into the new ad campaign." I handed David the correct report. David nodded, impressed. Then he turned back to Greg. "Greg, why didn't you know this? This is basic oversight." Greg mumbled an excuse, but the damage was done. David saw clearly who was running the ship and who was just dead weight. 2 days later, on a Friday, ironically, Greg was called into a meeting with HR. He didn't come back to his desk. Brenda came by later with a security guard to pack up his things. Rumor was that they offered him an early retirement package to save face, but everyone knew he was pushed out. The VP, David, called me into his office that afternoon. "Greg is moving on," David said simply. "We're going to be looking for a new VP of marketing." He looked at me meaningfully. "I want you to keep doing what you're doing. Keep the team steady. We'll see how things look in a few months." It wasn't a promise, but it was an opportunity. A real one this time. I walked back to my office, my real, secure office, and sat down. I looked at the payroll email I had printed out, which was still taped inside my notebook. That automated message had saved my life. It was a reminder that in the corporate world, documentation is everything. Greg had failed because he thought his power was absolute. He thought he could override contracts and systems with just his voice. He forgot that the machinery of a company, the payroll, the logs, the paper trail, is stronger than any individual ego. I took the rest of the team out for drinks that night. We toasted to the future. For the first time in 5 years, I didn't feel like I was carrying a burden. I felt light. I had fought for my worth and I had won. I thought about the text I would send my parents. Promotion secured. Boss handled. All good. It was a sweet feeling. The following Monday, I unlocked the office doors again. I turned on the lights. But this time, I didn't feel like a servant. I felt like the owner of my destiny. I walked into the director's office, sat in the chair, and started working. My boss had tried to cancel my future hours before it started, but he learned a hard lesson. You can't stop a promotion that the universe, and the payroll department, has already decided is yours. The email was sent. The check cleared. And I was here to stay.